That was something. I was in position getting ready for a little hit on Football Night in America, watching it on my phone, and I'm glad my microphone was off because I shouted a word that probably would have gotten us in a lot of trouble if my microphone had been on at that moment, because I couldn't believe it as the ball popped off the hand of Mark Andrew. And great job by T.J. Watt to stay home, to not bite on the run fake. Mike Tomlin said today they expect to pass in that setting, so that's one of the reasons why T.J. Watt went right at Lamar Jackson. But you know what? If T.J. Watt had bit on the handoff, Lamar Jackson could have just run the ball in, and maybe that's what he would have preferred to do, because if there's a clear path, he can get from point A to point B. But that was something, Charean, a great way to end a great game in one of the NFL's great rivalries.
Oh, boy, it sure was. And T.J. Watt, yet again, he's not going to go down in the statistics for that play, but that play saved the game, and kudos to T.J. Watt for interfering with that play, not biting on the play fake. Just a great play by him, and I think it was the right play call by the team. We can discuss whether it was the right decision or not, but it was a good play call. It just didn't work out because of T.J. Watt, and maybe, I guess you could second guess it by A, not blocking T.J. Watt, and B, maybe trying something on the other side away from him.
Let's hear a little from Ravens coach John Harbaugh and Steelers coach Mike Tomlin about that decision to go for two.
What went into the decision-making to go for two instead of just...
Try to win the game right there. We were pretty much out of corners, at that point in time. So there's an opportunity to try to win the game right there.
No, it did not. They aggressively play analytics. And so, from that standpoint, they're predictable.
I love that contrast because the way Tomlin explains it, they were going to do it no matter what because that's what they do. That's how they do it. Harbaugh suggested that he considered a factor external to the question of whether conceptually and theoretically you should go for two in that spot. I don't want to go to overtime here because I don't have defensive backs, so if I lose the coin toss, the Steelers take the ball, I may not be able to stop them as they march down the field for the game-winning touchdown. So that's always been my point, and I know you and I, Charean, are on the same page when it comes to analytics.
Yep.
It's part of the process, but the broader decision has to get made by virtue of factors like what happens as the game goes forward. Will we be able to win in overtime? And I just generally, in a spot like that, my preference is if I'm the home team, I'd rather go for one and play overtime at home. If I'm the road team, I'd rather go for two and win the game and not have to deal with overtime in my opponent's building, a place that's loud and raucous, and it's going to make it a little bit harder to win than if I was at home.
Well, I know Tomlin said that's what analytics said, but actually that's not what analytics said to do. Analytics, I wanted to know what the analytics were in that situation. They're exactly a toss-up. Going for two, 47.1% chance to win the game. Kicking the ball, 46.5%. So a complete toss-up. To me, and I'm John Harbaugh, I get his reasoning, but you have the best kicker in the NFL. You have Ben Roethlisberger on the other side of the ball who looked terrible for 3 quarters. I know he made some plays in the 4th quarter, but still, I think you have a chance there to kick the extra point, take it to overtime. See what the coin toss is going to do, and your kicker can kick it, as we know, from farther than any other kicker in NFL history. So the past 3 seasons, Mike, teams are 3 for 8 in that situation, down 1 in the 4th quarter. That's 37.5%. 10 of 23, 43% since 2000. So if you're looking at analytics, I'm not sure that was a right move to make. If you're making it simply because, hey, I'm out of cornerbacks and I don't think I can stop Ben Roethlisberger if they get the ball first, then he made the right decision. But your coin toss is 50-50, right? So you had 50% chance to get the ball first and go down and let Justin Tucker kick a long field goal to win it for you.
Here's where I reject analytics, because when you quote those numbers, those aren't developed based upon playing football games repeatedly at Heinz Field between these two teams.
Correct.
It is a broad blender. It is a broad stew of, and I don't know whose numbers those are. one team may have a different analysis, may build a different formula, have a different algorithm than another team. They may take things into consideration in shaping their overall analysis that other teams don't. It's not quite as simple as calculating the odds at a craps table. And that's one of the things years ago that I did the first time I was going to Nevada. I was going to Lake Tahoe, and I wanted to come up with a system to winning craps. And you look at every bet, and every bet, it's rigged just enough so over the long haul, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And your best bet at a craps table is to bet against the shooter, which is completely taboo. They don't like it. Don't bet on the shooter to lose, and God forbid that you're the shooter and you bet to lose. But my point is, those numbers are completely and totally inflexible. You aren't throwing the dice out in the elements. The felt is the same. The dice is the same. Everything is the same. You get into football numbers, and it quickly, I think, becomes unreliable. So it is funny that it's at least a close call. But, hey, if it's a close call and you're concerned about your corners and Big Ben had a better day than we thought he was going to have, then it makes sense to do what they did. All right, let's move on to what the Minnesota Vikings did. They had a trio of three-point attempts on Sunday against the Detroit Lions in a game where the Vikings trailed 20-6. They came back, took the lead late, and obviously they blew the game on the final play. Here's Mike Zimmer from after the game talking about the Vikings' efforts on the two-point conversion tries.
Yeah, they weren't very good, I didn't think. We tried to run it in, smash it down their throats from the 1 yard line, and then we tried to hand the ball off to Kane. So those weren't the best.
Well, and this is a broader observation that I've made a couple of times as it relates to Mike Zimmer and also more generally. When your head coach is an offensive specialist, you basically have two offensive coordinators. And the process of coming up with your two-point plays every week, you've got an extra chef, right? When the head coach is a defensive coordinator who completely delegates the offensive function, the more important of the two functions, completely delegates it to his offensive coordinator, a guy who was in the right place at the right time when his dad decided to retire, at a time when their hands were tied on going out and finding a new coordinator, at a time when everybody's going to be on the hot seat. Frankly, I really do question the timing of Gary Kubiak retiring because he did it at a time that made it more likely his kid was going to get the job. When you don't have that depth of experience and knowledge and skill on the offensive side of the ball, and when your coach abdicates responsibility for the offensive side of the ball, Charean, this is what you get. Shouldn't be surprised by it.
Well, and here's what I hate, Mike, and this would have been my question, and maybe you can answer it. I didn't find where Mike Zimmer was asked this question, but why are you going for 2 points? Like, if they had kicked the 3 extra points, they would have won the game. Why were they going for 2, especially in the third quarter? I realize you're down, but why aren't you kicking the extra points? And that again, is my problem with the analytics. Unless you absolutely positively need the 2-point conversion at the end of a game, fourth quarter I'm okay with, but they tried the first one in the third quarter.
Well, and a lot of it comes down to that analytics expert that most, if not all, teams currently have, that has a hotline to the coach. And, it very well may be that Mike Zimmer got to the point after being second-guessed internally, because this is what happens now. The analytics department is in a position to constantly communicate with ownership. It makes ownership less likely to be bamboozled by an old-school head coach who just throws around a bunch of football terms, and the owner just sits there and keeps his or her mouth shut because they don't want to come off as stupid. They speak the language better with the analytics person. The analytics person arms the owner with things that can be said to the coach to get the coach to back down. And it very well could be that Mike Zimmer's attitude just was, screw it, I'm going to do whatever your Ivy League graduate that has a pipeline to me during the game tells me to do. You tell me to go for 2, I'm going to go for 2. Now, the problem is you better have some better plays ready when you go for 2. I remember Sean Payton explaining this to us at one of the Super Bowls within the past couple of years. The idea that whether you go for 2 in a setting where maybe you should go for 2 is shaped by how many of your short yardage, goal line, 2-point plays you've used in the game. What else do you have that you feel good about? What do you want to save for later? That's relevant as well. This isn't Madden where you just fall back to the, the play that works for you when you need 2 yards. You got to have a look. You got to have a formation. You got to have a call that you think is going to work when you decide to go for 2. And if you don't go for 2. And I think that's what Mike Zimmer maybe doesn't even realize. Because he better have a better selection. If he's just going to go for 2 because the analytics guy says go for 2, you better have a good choice of plays when it's time to go for 2. And don't blame anybody else. It's your call. You're the head coach. And if you don't want to run the ball in the middle of the line of scrimmage, well, get more involved in the offense then.
Better have better plays, or you better have Dalvin Cook. Do you remember, I think it was last year, it might have been 2 years ago, we were talking about almost this exact same situation, and I didn't look up to see what it was, but I remember Dalvin Cook didn't play, and they tried Alexander Mattison similar on a 2-point play, and they didn't get it, and they ended up losing the game. Do you remember that game? I think it was last year, early in the year.
Wasn't it that giant hole of... Wasn't it that? Well, I think that was the play. There was a play where the guy ran the wrong way, where there was a gigantic hole, and it wasn't Dalvin Cook. It was Alexander Mattison. I don't know. It's so hard to remember.
It was Madison. They didn't have Cook.
That if he had just gone the right way, it would have worked. And I don't want to defame Alexander Mattison. I'm going to have to look it up. But I remember some screwy thing like that, where it was just not great coaching and not taking into account that you don't have your best running back out on the field. Their defense was even more of a problem. And I'm telling you, look, the bell's starting to toll for Mike Zimmer. We would be foolish if we didn't point it out. And when you don't defend the goal line, when all the Lions have to do is get to the goal line to win the game, and when Amon-Ra St. Brown tells me afterward, I was shocked that no one was within the 4 to 5 yards. Look how far back 23 is. And where's Cameron Dantzler? If they don't have Herman Moore or Calvin Johnson, you don't need Cameron. You don't need to guard the corner there. You got a guy who's going to run up and stop at the goal line and catch the ball and score a touchdown, and you're not disrupting that. And you know what? Take that away. Force Jared Goff to thread a needle. It's Jared Goff. Why would you take away the more difficult throw and give him the easier throw? Because he's going to make the easier throw. So this is all on Zimmer. And I suspect there was an awkward conversation at some point today between Mike Zimmer and someone last name of Wilf about what the hell happened in Detroit yesterday.
Well, you were talking about when you're an offensive guy, you have 2 offensive coordinators. They have 3 defensive coordinators, which might be part of the problem, and Mike Zimmer is calling the plays. 4th time the Vikings have lost this season on their opponent's final drive. And if you remember, Mike, they almost lost the Lions the first time, if not for that 54-yard field goal. That only saved them the first. Otherwise, they could be the one team that's lost twice to the Detroit Lions. Lions had 14 plays in that final drive. The Vikings blitzed them one time, and when they blitzed them, the one time they blitzed them, Breeland almost intercepted the ball. So why were you putting pressure on Jared Goff? You saw that he was not good under pressure. He hasn't been good under pressure all year. You got the fumble in the 4th quarter to get you back in the game. I just don't understand what they were doing on defense during that last drive.
Yeah, hey, this is falling apart for the Vikings. And look, I'm very practical when it comes to assessing the Vikings. Their best case scenario was to get to the playoffs and get obliterated by the number 2 seed or the number 3 seed in the first round. So as it stands now, and hey, they can go get a chip on their shoulder because God forbid we're pointing out how bad they sucked yesterday. They got the Steelers on Thursday night. Maybe they win that. Maybe the Steelers are banged up and can't muster the will to go out and have another tough, hard-fought game after taking the Ravens to the wire. And then you got the Bears on a Monday night. The Vikings could get to 7-7 and have a chance. But it's Rams, Packers, Bears after that. They're going to be on the outside looking in, I think. Yeah. And Mike Zimmer's going to be on the outside looking in as well. And the Vikings, I predict, are going to be looking for a new head coach 5 weeks from today. Black Monday. Yes, it's only 5 weeks away.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.